It started off as a slow, steady rise. And then when I got into the health business, eventually when I had a major hit there, that's where I became like a high mid six figure earner. And like I say, as a ballroom dance teacher, I was lucky if I made 30,000 a year.
Welcome back to the Built to Scale podcast. I'm your host, Shmuel Hirschberg. You just heard Paul Lawrence describe going from a $30,000 a year income to a mid six figure income. No investors, no lucky break, just a guy who refused to accept the ceiling everyone else said was there. Paul has done it all: pool cleaning, ballroom dancing, and being mentored by Agora legend Mark Ford. Now he's running Naturecast, a lean, high margins supplement business built almost entirely on copy and conviction. This episode is about how he did it and why the gap between where you are and where you want to be is smaller than you think. If this episode hits, subscribe, leave a review, and send it to someone who needs the push. Now, if you're sitting, relax. If you're at the gym, pick up the pace, because this episode is going to prove that all you really need to start scaling is a dream and the audacity to act on it. I'm your host, Shmuel Hirschberg, and this is the Built to Scale podcast. Listen up and let's start scaling now. Paul, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Hey, likewise, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so why don't we just get into the conversation here about your trajectory? There are a lot of twists and turns along the way, so why don't you take us back to the beginning, to that trail marker and where it all started?
All right. So I guess I don't got to figure out how far you want to go back, but we could go like to college days, or we could go to like where that's actually really sort of kind of what was my origin. That was really during college that I realized that I was basically like totally unemployable because I don't like to be told what to do. I don't like to wake up early. And I also don't like to have limits on what I can achieve.
And what were
So
you studying?
marketing. So
Okay. All
yeah,
right.
so
So that's a
that did.
marketable.
Yeah, you'd think so. The thing is, when you come out with a 4-year degree in marketing, at least when I did, at that time, I had payphones, 25 cents would get you a phone call. But
Okay.
but it did help in terms of like I was working part-time jobs and was very unhappy, getting treated miserably by the general public. It was a retail thing. And I decided I can't take this. I've got to like do something to make money on my own. I lived with my mom. I was cleaning our pool. I live in South Florida, by the way. So, there's a lot of pools here. And
Yep.
I came up with the idea, why don't I start a pool service? And so I did the research and discovered that I could really undercut the competition by a significant amount with a low overhead. And I created a one-page direct response flyer. And even then, in school, they emphasized benefits, and so forth. And I really emphasized the price point saving, particularly on that first month. So like at that
Okay.
time, what a price of pool was, say, like $40 a month. But what I did is, so my regular price was, say, $29.95. So it's 25% lower, significantly, less money. But then like my first month, I made 50% off so that people, would feel like they had very little risk. And
Yeah,
anyway, I just
for sure.
basically started getting like unending customers that way. And I
And
finished
you're
up.
basically built a monthly recurring revenue model here
Uh,
from the get go.
yeah, I did. And I built one that had like, it was just like a water faucet you could turn on and get more customers at will because I just, hit a sweet spot where there was a lot of them that, people that are sort of unhappy, and you'd be surprised. People were, these were affluent people, but they're happy. A lot of people were, yeah, why not? You're $10 cheaper.
Yeah. And
Uh,
what do you mean by that? It was like a water faucet and you could just turn it on at will,
that
like in terms
if
of customer acquisition
yeah,
or?
in terms of customer acquisition, that I could just, because it was very predictable. If I decided, I need 20 more pools, I knew I was, have like a 3.5% response rate. And so I just, okay, let me just put out 1,000 flyers, and there's 35 more pools.
So
You know,
you really worked out your CAC and your conversion rate and got
Yeah.
everything rolling. And you say flyers, so I just want to clarify here. We're talking pre-internet, right?
Yeah, this was pre-internet. Sadly,
Wow.
my childhood was pre-internet.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. So fast forward a little bit. The internet comes
Yeah.
around, and you're not
So
cleaning pools anymore.
that's right. Well, without going into the whole thing, I tried the corporate world, found myself very unhappy, and decided I have to do something that's going to make me happy. I stumbled across a book. It's an old book. I recommend it still. It's called The Magic of Thinking Big. His last name is Schwartz or whatever. But the main gist of the book was that don't limit yourself to thinking that, you can only do certain things. You should do something that you love and that there's money to be made in almost anything. So I was determined, I'm going to find something I like to do that I enjoy. I was looking through classified ads, stumbled across an Arthur Murray ad. You know what that is? It's like a dance instruction franchise. And it
Okay.
just said, people no experience. That time I was a young guy going to clubs and I liked to dance. That was my MO for getting to meet girls. I studied MTV videos and I like dancing. And so, give it a try. And turned out I like it. And I quickly realized again, I'm very entrepreneurial. I started right away realizing I can't take having a boss. And also, I'm getting paid $15 an hour in there. At that time, I think it was $60 an hour. Boy, I'd like to have a little bit more share of the pie. So I opened up my own dance instruction business. And that was where I also had a side, just this in terms of my storytelling background. I also decided I love movies and I want to get into movies. And I started learning to be a screenwriter. I studied books. Traveled to LA, went to seminars. I did actually have some luck in that regard. Or yeah, I found an agent. I sold their options, about half a
Some
dozen scripts.
screenplays.
One of them got made. Actually, it was called Cruel World. It was a multi-million-dollar movie. It appeared on Showtime and the Movie Channel, and it was amazing. I was sitting in my own living room watching my own name roll across the credits in the
Amazing.
beginning of the
What year
movie.
was this in?
Let's see, this was early 2000s, I guess. Maybe 2005, something like that.
Very cool. So what
And
made you want to get out of that world, or was that world closed
well,
off? What
yeah, I mean,
happened there?
everything that I ever saw in terms of like movies where you see crazy nut job people. I could take up a whole hour just telling about the crazy, insane people that I met and people ruthlessly, screwing you over and this and that. I made money at it, but it was not steady. So I was not giving up my job, my business just yet as a dance instructor. But around that time, I stumbled into was the universe's plan for me was that Mark Ford and his wife
Okay. Yeah, we
hired me.
mentioned him before.
Yeah, hired me, and I was giving them dance lessons, and we just hit it off. We became friendly. At that time, too, we both train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which, because of the popularity of UFC, a lot of people know what that is now, but 20 years ago, nobody knew what it was. Anyway, that started off a friendship, and then he found out that I was writing movies, and he said, if you want to do something else with your writing and at the same time you can do everything else you're doing, you could learn to be a copywriter. And I found out how much money a copywriter got paid, which was to me an astronomical amount of money.
What was that ballpark figure back then?
That was like 5,000 plus maybe a royalty.
Okay.
If you're really just starting out, I think the first couple I did, maybe I got paid 3 or something. At that time, that was when Early to Rise, was just
Craig
getting rolling
Ballantyne?
out. Excuse me?
Is that Craig Ballantyne's?
Now, but
Oh,
but
this is before.
yeah, but way back there, I don't know if I know the whole story exactly, but I think Mark was writing like a newsletter for friends. Someone finally said you should monetize it or whatever, and that would be his story to tell. But at any rate, he said, why don't you write some articles? Because I'm the entrepreneurial, like small business guy, sort of and probably still is, my area of expertise. And he said, why don't you write some articles? And I wrote this article about starting this pool business that I told you that I did in college. And Mark said,
And this is for Agora Health?
uh, no, this is Early to Rise. So this is financial still.
Okay.
Wasn't
Okay.
in
So we
health
didn't
at
get
all just
okay.
yet. And Mark said, this information is like insanely good. There's no way you should give this out for free. What about if we make a deal with you? You'll write a course, you'll write the promotion, and we'll give you a royalty. So, of course, I said, hell yeah. I wrote the course and everything, and it was like a monster hit. The second they dropped it, I don't remember what the numbers are exactly, but it was enormous numbers. And I was suddenly getting my royalty checks, which was what, 2% or whatever, was like 6,500, 8,000 a month. Just to give you some, my dance instruction income was like 2,000 a month or something. This was like very good money to me. And then I started being, as I said, my usual entrepreneurial. I was saying, boy, this is what I'm making with 2% of this. I'd sure like to own a
What can
larger
you make with?
percentage of that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I discussed that with Mark too, and he said, "Yeah, go for it. I'll be supportive of it." And I launched a business called smallbizriches.com, and that's where I created a number of different entrepreneurial courses. They did well. I became a guy that started making a low six-figure income,
Okay,
not on my feet dancing anymore.
okay,
And somewhere in there, I was introduced to someone that was in another Mark Ford protege. I call him, like, I always joke, like, I call him myself, I won't reference, I call like it's like a stray cat. He finds these people that seem like they should be much more successful than they are, and then, mentors them. And this
yeah,
was another protege of his who was I'm not going to say his name because, some things did eventually go wrong for him. But anyway, it was massively, massively successful. And that's where I got introduced to the health business.
nice.
And I
A quick
wrote a first,
question before we get into that health business,
yeah, sure.
and then eventually you get to Agora Publishing, or is that beforehand?
So yeah, this first one, I should actually, if I wanted to take one back step, after that first hit they called it the micro business course, this first
Okay,
one that I told you about. And then, so since I had written something for them that was a big hit, I guess like many other businesses, like the movie business, once you have a hit, people are interested in doing business with you. And
hmm,
I stumbled across this guy who was a jujitsu guy also. He was an interesting guy. He was like 6'5", 265 pounds of all muscle. He was a Division I football player in college rather. And anyway, so one day he started mentioning to me that he makes his money day trading, basically. And I thought that was interesting. And could you explain to people how you would do that? So I said,
hmm.
all right, you know what? I'm going to show you how to write the course, and then I'm going to write the promotion for it. And so, I'm a big believer like not all, but a lot of my successful hits have come from stories. And just even
So
like that.
here's a raw question that I want to
Yeah.
ask. As you not stumbled, or as you came out of the gate with your pool cleaning business, you wrote
Yeah.
a few screenplays in Hollywood.
Hmm.
You were working for Early to Rise. You had your own small biz, and then again, it sounds like you're entering the world of Agora now, and we're
Yeah.
going to get to Naturecast as well. So, as every step of the way, it brings us, obviously, if we're looking, let's say, on the axis of time, it's every
Yeah.
step of the way is bringing us closer to here, and maybe like
Yeah.
kind of up that ladder. But in terms of your income, in terms of your successes, would you say it was the same trajectory, just straight up, or were there some ups and downs along the way?
It started off as a slow, like, steady rise, and then when I got into the health business, eventually that's where, like, when I had a major hit there, that's where, I became like a high mid six-figure earner, as opposed to, I was like a low six-figure earner that had, like I say, as a ballroom dance teacher, I was lucky if I made 30,000 a year,
Yeah.
and then I became like a low six-figure guy, and then the major thing is, but I got a couple of big bumps. And this other one that I was telling about, the second project with this guy, I nicknamed him the Bone Crusher, and because he was like this huge
Love
guy.
it.
And my story was that, he's a Wall Street guy that is, he's breaking the ranks and he's going to share his money vault system. And really, my promotion was a lot more about him than the mechanism. And it just caught fire, and Agora. So basically, I brought them an entire package. So that's, I guess, what was attractive for them, why they were willing to share, the wealth with me, because they didn't have any risk in the development, which I built the product rather, and I trained this this bone crusher guy to do it, and then and then I wrote the promotion. And so then once they agreed to test it, and it was a big hit and sold seven-figure number. And, in that one, I did have a nice little, and this other guy, Bone Crusher guy, did very well too, I have to say.
That's awesome.
We got it.
And would you say like the steps from going from one industry to another industry, was that luck, just circumstance of where you were in life, or was that intentional?
Yeah, well, I would say it was intentional. I think you have to understand that for like the first part of my early adulthood, I was kind of an underachiever. I was pretty mixed up, without going to my whole backstory or whatever. I grew up in a really awful neighborhood where three guys that I went to school with my age were either the perpetrator or victim of a homicide, that difficult family stuff. And I was pretty mixed up, and it took me a long time to find my way, which really happened from reading that Magic of Thinking Big book, where I just became focused on success. I think most people that know me say that I'm like pretty intense and like just like unrelenting. I think because this whole thing, the thing with Mark, it isn't something like happened overnight. I was friends with him for like years. I think he's made the joke before that he basically had to help me become successful, or he was just never going to get rid of me because
Yeah.
I just kept showing up. And so yeah, so what I saw is because I knew of another protege of his who he was like a direct salesman of, I won't say enough to really identify who he is, like almost a door-to-door salesman that became, a multimillionaire. And it was in the natural health. And then I saw this other guy. I said, man, this is a business where I think this is something where I can scale it out bigger because while I had my own list and the small business thing and I was making like, decent money, I felt like I was having a tough time finding a way to get up to the next level. And I just felt like the health thing was there. And then once again, it all started like with one big hit. And when I joined this other protege, I was sort of given like a smaller partnership interest in it. So in this one, I wrote the promotion. This thing was a male potency supplement. So when we called it, it's had a nickname, Big Bubba, which sounds kind of crazy. But I think that little name, I think I have to give credit to Mark. He was saying, hey, what about if we called it Big Bubba? But anyway, I wrote a promotion, and we came out the door, and we were doing direct mail. So direct mail can be very profitable, but you can have big misses in that too. And this one
Yeah.
right away, it was a
I've
big,
had a couple of people on the Built to Scale podcast here who
uh,
have spoken about the resurgence of
yeah,
direct mail.
yeah.
Are you still involved in the direct mail game?
Let's say like so I'm somewhat temporary shelved it because I don't want to be too spread around. And I'm a little bit, while I have a few people that either are freelancers or one full-time employee, I'm a pretty small operation with a low overhead, and I'm kind of a one-man marching band. And so
Okay.
I'm really focusing on the online right now. But yeah, so it's still there. I mean, anyone, until this generation, I don't know if next generations will still open their mail. But I mean, this is not years ago when I did direct, like 10 years ago. This is, I don't know, only a couple of years ago that I kind of decided I have too many things on my plate. Let me take something off. So it's still there. And as well, like I think I had mentioned to you, I've had a lot of success in supplements and newspapers as well. And so print
Advertising
newspapers,
in newspapers.
yeah, print advertising and newspapers, yeah. So that's
How recently would you say you were scaling ads in print newspapers?
same thing. Within the last couple of years, I
Okay.
actually ran ran an offer for a few years that was, we were was doing a seven-figure number, and actually really kind of one of the things new are, so the two elements are, of course, you have to have your original creative, and the creative for the newspaper has a formula, that's you really need to stick to make it work. And then you just sort of have to find, sometimes the magic is, like the right product. This was a vision product, and there wasn't a really other vision products being run, and it just resonated with people. And then a lot of the other part of the newspapers is the phone script when people call, because on newspapers, you don't even, the general wisdom is that you don't even put a website on there. There's just a phone number. And so we have to have a company that can catch the calls, that's really good at the conversions, because the newspapers are super expensive, and you have to, have convert really like 40% or more to, to be profitable.
Okay.
So go on.
Yeah, no, so I just wanted to kind of just not speed up. I wanted to focus
Yeah.
more a little bit on what's how you shifted over from all this, right? After smallbizriches.com, right?
Yeah.
To Naturecast product.
Yeah.
That's the company you founded, Naturecast product?
Yeah, yes. Well, technically, like I had this other partnership with this guy. I was a minority partner, and he really had a monster business in the financial space. He just decided that, this is just like it's too much for me, and basically, he's trying to let me have NatureCast. So yes,
Okay.
so I was a co-founding partner of it, and then I was,
And
given the name, allowed to use the name, and we had 6,000 names that time. So I started NatureCast with 6,000 mail order buyers. And, we had emails for maybe a couple of thousand of those. And I was given the rights to use this first big brother offer that we had.
okay.
And that's where I started into the health, or, the health field, let's call it natural
Okay.
health.
And then from there, you've just been working on this for like the past 15 years or so?
Yeah. So, like, my first focus was I was a big believer in that I want to have like a list, that I was a big believer in this business model of what you're going to do is you're going to give people a valuable newsletter, and you're going to build a relationship with people, and then you're going to sell them. And to this day, that's where a lot of my focus is. We publish 365 days a year. And I would say about five of those issues, let's call them, are editorial in nature. And I believe that that it's a really, really good newsletter. I still I supervise it. If I don't write it myself, of course, now with AI, I used to have to, have an employee that dug up studies and wrote the articles. Now, honestly, I look through it, but I tell AI, I want to look for something in this today or whatever. And what we do basically is, because I'm not a lot of natural, I also sort of broke a rule in that, at least when I was getting into it, that to have a natural health company, you needed to have like a doctor who was, your figurehead. Since I didn't have really any money, it wasn't super easy to find a doctor. And I said, I'm not going to use a doctor. I'm just going to uh, publish articles about studies, because there's all these studies. And so, studies might be, a new study that was done at Harvard. They monitored people and saw that if they eat broccoli twice a week, they have a 20% less chance of getting colon cancer. So that might be an article. And then the article that I do is, it's one idea. It's simple, like easily digestible nugget. Keep them to about 250 words max. And so I have a very specific formula on those articles, a nice opening line to, get their interest, report about the study in simple ways, a good takeaway. So, like, depending what the thing is, for example, there's, if might publish something on that sunlight, if you get sunlight certain number of days a week. Yeah, so this is what you might want to do. You want to, according, I'll quote other experts, that you
Yeah.
want to get 15 minutes of sun, and this and that. So that's the basis. And then in the daily publications, we'll have some ads that run, little like classified or insert ads that, link back to our products. And then a couple of times, 2 to 3 times a week, we might send out like a dedicated offer. And this is where either it'll be one of our own products, or if I do a lot of these reciprocal JV swaps, and we'll do those as well.
Okay. So it sounds like in terms of just scaling, right? There are many different ways a company can scale, and I just
Yes.
really want to get to the bottom of how you're scaling NatureCast and what you found to be successful. So, but someone once described it to me as like, you have a bunch of mountain peaks, right? And
Hmm.
you can't climb all the peaks at once. So you might have a mountain with affiliate marketing. In today's world, obviously, you have influencer marketing, and you might have paid acquisition
Hmm.
and email marketing, but it sounds like you're really focused on that email marketing mountain.
Yeah, that's for me. You're 100% right, and not to say I haven't, like, dabbled to take a little stab at climbing up some of these other mountains, and, with kind of a mixed bag of results. My biggest results have definitely come from the email marketing, and to me, a lot, though, that it goes back to the beginning of it, that you first have to have, the right, your product, your offer. And then in terms of, like, well, with the supplements, it's a lot about the mechanism. When I was talking about the financial things, I could sold millions of dollars based on a guy's personality. But today, especially, that I found, when I was doing this, honestly, like my promotions, I sold millions of dollars of this anti-aging promotion product rather. And, when I look back at that copy, that landing page, probably would die a quick, sudden death if that's the origin. That same product is still my biggest seller today, actually. But, the landing page has been greatly, greatly revamped. But it starts with that, right? So in this particular anti-aging product, I came up with a mechanism that people could believe in, and this is it's called HGH activator. So it helps, help your body produce more of this hormone. And that I had strong data, clinical studies in terms of, for me anyway, like in the Nutra field, the proof's important. And then the main, I didn't have like a story of this guy took it and his whole life changed. It was more about like, this has been something that's been available for the wealthy people, the rich people, and now, it's available to you. And then I got all into the mechanism, and then was fortunate that we've had I was lucky that people have like written in, you know, wrote things. I started taking this and I suddenly didn't need my glasses. I started taking this and my knees were killing, and now I'm, back in my warehouse moving boxes. And so I, used those a lot in terms of also had a couple of people, they were handwritten notes. And so I literally had their like handwritten notes, on the website. And I think people can tell, they have like a stink factor. They can tell when something's fake.
Hmm.
And to the same contrary, they would just seem, they could sense that this was real and made sense.
And what about like in terms of retention versus acquisition? So email marketing is obviously more on the retention side of
Yeah,
the marketing world, right?
yeah,
And it's only a losing battle if you're not replenishing, if you're
yes.
not beating your churn rate. So how are you ensuring that you're getting more leads and new customers and new emails into your email list? How have you been managing that over the years?
So yeah, so you're right. So okay, so that's almost like a two-pronged question, right? One is the retention of your names, and then the other part is the getting new ones. So I'll jump, if you don't mind, I'll jump in. I'm getting what I'm doing, and having some modest success in bringing in names. But in terms of the retention part, so I just this last week we did a study like of all the orders of that week, and then mapped them back to the names and discovered that 40% of that week's orders were from people that had been on my subscriber list for 5+ years. So
40% of which orders?
of the orders, yeah, of
Of
that,
like what, like in the last 30 days or last
yeah,
60 days?
in the last 30 days, yeah.
So
So
we're
so
talking dedicated VIP type of customers.
yeah, so I figured it was pretty good, but I was like, wow, that's amazing, because to have names that are 5 years old that are not just opening, that are still buying, so I think that in my case, because a lot of, obviously you have to keep, like you said, you have to have new blood come, especially, let's face it, like the Nutria. There's different avenues of it, but a lot of it, at least my company, is dedicated towards the 50 plus market. And really a hell of a lot of my customers are like 80 or 90. I mean, one of the biggest things that we fight is people angrily calling saying, I never ordered that.
Huh,
Oh, wait a second, sir. Here's your IP address, and this is like a thing you did. And what's the name of it again? Well, it's
okay.
Oh, that's right. I did order that. And
Uh-huh.
so these people are not going to last forever. You know, so
Yeah,
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 so yeah, so you have to get new names. So I combination of one, I'm always, and you have two kinds of names, right? You have people that are essentially opt-ins into your list, or you have buyers, people that bought one of your products. So obviously, the more buyers you have, the stronger list performance you're going to have. But you want both, and then I guess these days too, right? A lot of people have, like these companies, the anonymous website captures. Those are people, they're probably like the weakest leads, but they are people, they landed on your website, right? And then they left and didn't buy anything. And they didn't bother to opt in, and I have various different experiments, from people leave and a pop-up box tries to take a last stab at grabbing their name, or that I do a lot of lead acquisition stuff where that's I've had like a modest success in lead acquisition on Facebook, more so than like the straight to sales. Although that was partially based on, for me anyway, I was having a lot of problems with their compliance on the direct sales part of it. It was just like impossible. I was had like an account suspended and everything was getting disapproved. But now lately, they seem like they're improving more. So I'm dabbling more in looking to go straight to sales. Anyway, but you have people that opt in, and then you do the typical funnel thing where have a series of emails that like I had one that was going very well where it'd say like learn how a $4 nutrient that you can get anywhere can give you the skin 20 years younger. And
so you're doing a lot of lead gen opt-ins,
yeah,
people.
yeah,
Okay.
so I'm doing some of that, and then, of course, I do a lot of my business, it always has been, uh, on the, reciprocal JV swaps, and, I s
Oh, I see.
had had some partners that I was really punching way above my weight. My offer, so even though I was recipping and getting them some orders, the strength of it is that they were crushing it in terms of my offer, making a ton of money. I had numerous people, regularly doing these things. And of course, all those new buyers, then that's when they're hot, right? And hey, you just bought some of this. You know what would go great with that other anti-aging thing? A telomere product. You got to have both.
Okay.
So
And are you scaling those upsells like in an email chain, or are you having a phone support team call people after they do an order for an order bump?
yeah, I'm mostly doing it with email right now. I've dabbled a little bit in terms of doing it, on the phones, and I probably would like, again, like you say, there's a lot of different. If you're in this business and you try and go like in every direction you could go, probably, well, anyway, my head would just like explode, because
Yeah,
there's
for
so many
sure.
different options that you can do. But it's something I've done a little bit of and would like to do more. And it's a lot about, I think, finding the right partners and stuff. And then, also being at a Valium, I've been talking to people about maybe adding a non physical product, like sort of, let's call it a coaching program for lack of a better word. That, like, oh, if you have an anti-aging product, let's, get people with a big high end back end on that. And so, a lot of times for me, especially because I am sort of a lone wolf kind of operator a lot in terms of internally, it's forming partnerships for me, that if I find the right parties to work with, then you can do other things. And I'm perfectly willing to give up a fair share of the money to be able to do something else, because
Totally.
what would you like to have? 100% of a very little amount or 50% of a big number?
Well, then also as time goes on, you're probably retaining more and more of that pie that someone, in terms of, let's say, an affiliate
Yeah,
offer where you're giving them a one-time cost per acquisition fee, and that could be very high. It might even be more than the person is paying
yeah,
for their order. So theoretically, you're in the red. But if you have a very strong email cycle and upsell cycles and the like over time, and you'll be making money hand over fist. And like you said, you have people on your list that have been buying with you for, 5 years or more.
Yeah.
How many products have you expanded out to with Naturecast? Because I was trying to keep up with it, but you said there you have like an anti-aging, a telomere, digital products. So how many products have you expanded
In
to in
total, I think
15
that we have
years?
over 30. When I started, my thing was when I started, I came from this direct mail world where what in order to launch a supplement, to get the product cheap enough, at $2 or $3 a bottle or whatever, you'd have to buy 5,000 of them. And that was a big swing for me back then. And so I just didn't know. I thought oh, I really can't do supplements because I don't have money. And then I sort of stumbled across a few people that had products, but they were like not selling them too reasonably. So I started selling supplements. And then somewhere, over a little time, I discovered, oh, there are companies that will sell me lower quantities at like not $2 a bottle or $3 a bottle, but at least $6 a bottle, where you can still have a pretty high acquisition spend and still make money. And then of course, for my higher sellers. But so anyway, that's how I started off with the information products. Because what I would do is I would just hire experts, like Tai Chi. I'd hire a guy and do a Tai Chi video, Pilates. And so because of my background from the dance, I had made instruction videos, and so I knew how to produce them like really cheaply. I'd tell a person, "Hey, you want to make $100 an hour?" And they would go, "Yeah, that's 100. Yeah, that sounds good." And so I'd pay them, "Okay, we'll do a 2-hour shoot. You're going to get paid $200." And they're like, "Great." And they'd sign a release saying I can, use the video however I want. And I'd film it myself and edit it and everything. So for a few $100, and then I'd write the promotion myself too. So I needed a programmer to put it up online. But for a very nominal amount, I would have a new product. And so I launched
Yeah,
a bunch of those, and then I started thinking the thing about the supplements that I really like about them is that they're like when people like it, they become repeat buyers, whether they're on auto ships, or just recurring sales. And I do go after auto ships pretty heavily, although it's a little hard to do. You can't really do that on the affiliate side too much because, what your upsells have got to be to get the biggest, average order so that you can,
for
pay the
sure.
affiliate enough money to make it run. But anyway, so and to answer your question, by the way, feel free to redirect me because I'll go off on all kinds of tangents, and I like the sound of my own voice, so feel free to jump in anywhere. But I'd have to count them, but I'd say I have about probably 10 dietary supplement offers,
Okay,
and then there were maybe
nice.
about
And
50.
then you keep rotating it, and like you said,
Yeah,
with that email, the money is in the list,
yeah, for
and
me.
yeah, and you pretty much bootstrapped everything from the beginning. So you kind of like had a slow burn until you hit all these
Yeah,
products.
I did. My first emphasis, I was doing these swaps just for lead gen swaps with people, not for sales. I didn't even really even know. I was just like, I got to get a list. I got to get a list. And then one day I was talking to another new partner and they said, oh, we don't really want to do a lead gen. Why don't we just run a sale? And this one actually, it started out, I have this DVD called Stretchmatic. And it was the basic idea was that gain lean muscle by doing pleasant stretches, because that's like nobody wants to tell them they're going to have to do a bunch of hard exercise, to get into shape. But this idea, the funny thing is, so when I would have these people make these videos, I would usually shoot two, you know. So
Okay,
I did a stability ball program. And then I told the girl who was doing it, I need to shoot a second one with you. Got any ideas? She said, I could do stretching. All right, I'll do a stretching one. What the hell? So anyway, I was talking to this guy and he was like, well, what do you have? I don't know, maybe the stretching thing. And they ran it all of a sudden. I was traveling. I was like, I looked on my phone and all of a sudden it was 5 grand worth of orders in like a few hours. So, I was, if they continued to run that, I mean, for years, it would sell 8 grand a month for years. And I had a number of people, other people, big money, the stretching thing for a long time. And then, eventually, then I started having some money to work with, and that's
okay,
and then I got into
and that's where
launching.
you're at now.
I'm mostly, I mean, my Mochas, like I say, I like the supplements because they have a higher AOV. This was a
Okay,
$29 product. So,
okay,
so in today's, we have all these people, no, at least I see them. Like we're on the same groups and stuff like that. And, people say, they have, $200 CPA or even 125, even like the people that I know are like, I don't know if I want to use the word legit, but people that I know and this and that, they'll have ones that are, not quite that crazy a number, but when you're selling a $29 DVD, also like, yeah, we were going to talk before about negative spends. I know several different, companies, big companies, they can invest in a big negative spend on the acquisition. They know they can spend, they're
Yeah.
on average going to get $800 from the
Lifetime
customer.
value is the name of the game.
Yeah, so they can
Yeah.
spend $300 on the upfront part for two reasons. One, they know they're going to get the $800, and two, they have the cash flow to invest in that money now and hold on to it. And so,
Yeah.
my being a smaller operator like that, I'm really, really negative spend is kind of tough for me.
S- So where is Paul Lawrence now? Where is Naturecast going? I mean, I guess you could take this any which way you want. You know the trajectory of your business, but what can you share with us in terms of like what you have planned for on both fronts, you know?
Sure.
And also like how does, let's say, AI fit into all of this?
All right. So now you threw in a real monkey wrench there on the end to
Yeah.
complicate the answer. Let's start with, so in terms of my NatureCast business, I'm still moving forward. One thing I didn't really share, I had a little hiccup in my business that a few years ago I had a sort of perfect storm of bad stuff happen at once. I ran into some delivery problems and this and that at the same time. There was some personal matters and tough health stuff that came in the family. So between the two, the business didn't entirely collapse, but it, really took a downturn. And the last year or so, everything's really turned around in terms of personal stuff, I'm happy to say.
Okay, good for you. I'm glad you
Thank
turned
you.
it
Yeah,
around.
thank God for that. And, so that's very important. At the end of the day, it's important. I know I'm not going to like starve no matter what happens. I'm not a starving dance teacher anymore. And if I live modestly, I could retire tomorrow. But you have to be happy, feel blessed for all the things. I'm lucky I can wake up today and come out, and go after new business, so in terms of personally, and just trying to be the happiest person I can, and I don't always succeed at it, but try and make it that every person that has an interaction with me feels a little better than before, if I can do
Well, you're
that.
doing a great job, Paul. I feel great.
Oh, okay, so I got to win with you, and hopefully there's a few people that that some of this might be helpful or interesting, at least to them. So outside of course, I still dabble in the entertainment business. By the way, I'm producing a show called Sketchy Harmonies, which is I have a sketch comedy group, and I produce out in L.A. or was doing a once a year event where I've had the major comedy venues in the world, the Laugh Factory, the Improv, Comedy Store. So, but that's whether it makes money or not, that's just a passion interest. But in terms of direct response, so I'm rebuilding my NatureCast business and just continuing to gradually add different products, and on top of that, build up new partnerships. Because for me, these reliable partnerships, when you have friends that are in the business, I can go to them and say, I have a new offer I've created. At first, I'll run it on my list. It's done good on my list. Would you give it a try? And they'll be sure. For you, Paul, yeah, because they know I'll do the same for them. And then if I get a few good numbers there, then I'll go out to some people I may have relationships with, but it's friendly-ish, but they're not, but they are not going to do it just because they like me. So
Yeah.
I look, these numbers look pretty good, and they'll give it a try and go from there. And then in terms of, I'm circling back now to, because I've been selling dietary supplements for 14 years, and it's still interesting and on to me all. But I do, like I say, in terms of my ability to help people, I feel like I can probably offer a lot in terms of people that want to be in their own business. And so I'm building right now a new course for small business people to get into business, whether they have little capital or no capital. And then besides just a front end product on that too, I am developing and would like to have a back end on that coaching program on that. So the promotion is getting close to done. I'm still very blessed these days. Like Mark Ford was really my mentor for years. I'd meet him once a month, and he'd and go over everything for me. And once I became like got to a certain degree of success, I stopped like relying on him so much on like a regular basis. Plus, this is talk about like me that's got a lot of things going on. He's got so
Yeah.
much going on. I'm grateful for everything that he's done. But he did mention that he'd be up for taking a look and giving me
And
his
helping you
feedback
with
on
this
that.
project. Very cool. Very cool. It sounds like everything that you've been doing from the very beginning of cleaning pools
Mhm,
to Naturecast to this entrepreneur program that you want to start for small
mhm.
business owners, helping them. And I guess you can fake it till you make it, especially
Yeah,
if you're bootstrapping something and you need to present and project that you have some, that you're bigger than what you are. But at
yeah,
the very core, if you're not wearing it on your sleeve, if it's not in your heart, it's going to be very hard to scale something. And it sounds like everything that you've been doing, maybe that's the key to your success and scaling is that you've really seen problems and kind of like lived them and ma-
yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I agree with you. Yeah, so at the end of the day, yeah, if you're not outright lying, you want to put on your best face. If you're a smaller company, you want to maybe make a little scene. But yeah, but I think people do have like let's just call it like a BS sensor, and people when I think tend to the opposite. I think that's what resonated. Why, like in the very beginning, that small biz riches thing that I did is how what that the story on that was when I was married. My wife was from Peru, and she didn't even speak English when she was here, which amazingly, I guess when two people want to get together, I didn't really speak Spanish, but we
that's what
somehow
I was going to ask. What language did you speak initially?
I only spoke my previous girlfriend before that was from Brazil, so I spoke a little Portuguese. I met her,
Okay.
I met her in a nightclub, and she said, "I'm sorry, I don't speak English." And I said, "What do you speak?" She said, "Spanish. I speak a little Portuguese." So we went from there. But anyway, when we got together, she had been a nanny, and we needed to, I didn't have money yet, and she needed to work. And so I came up with an idea. She can clean houses. And I took a picture of her holding a mop. And I might be biased, but I thought she looked pretty photogenic, and I wrote a little again direct flyer piece. And so when we did the small biz micro biz program rather with
Okay.
Agora, it still had that picture of her, and I explained to people, here's how I turned an immigrant girl who couldn't speak English into somebody that went from a nanny to making $1,000 a week being her own boss. And that was also 20 years ago. So I'm married 20 plus years. So
That's a great soundbite. We might have to use that as the
yeah,
cold opening.
yeah. And so yeah, crushed, so, but again, the thing is at the heart of it, there was truth to it. Right. And so, and this is the same, that's my story in terms of, listen, I was really, I was a down and out guy. That company I worked for out of college was what they had called the thing called the rent to own business, where they like rent people TVs, refrigerators with an option to buy it. And it was an awful business because it, was directed at the lower socioeconomic people. Only 10% of the people ended up achieving ownership. And even when you were in their management program, it was awful. I was so unhappy.
Hmm.
I was so miserable, and I found a way, I have to do something that's going to make me happy. And ultimately, like, it's an old, do something you love and you'll never work a day or whatever. But I think if you do, one of the keys to a successful life, right, is doing something that you can at least tolerate, and
Yeah, for
hopefully
sure. For sure.
that you enjoy. And even though, like I say, I'm a little fatigued as far as the health stuff goes. It's very lucrative, so it's not like I'm gonna walk away from the business. But that is why I feel like want to get some new energy, into something.
Nice, nice. We're running out of time here.
Yeah,
I guess. I mean, I guess there's no time because it's a podcast, and I can make
yeah,
it go as long as I want. But I want to be cognizant of your time, and you've been
yeah,
so gracious and just dropping these knowledge bombs and sharing so much wisdom. But I do want to ask one question before I'll ask. Yeah, obviously the final question of how people can get in touch with you. But
sure.
before that, if you launch Naturecast today, right, knowing what you know today, what would you have done differently?
I would have gone straight into the supplements as opposed to, like I say, I started out doing the informational DVDs because I didn't know I could be in supplements. I didn't think I had the money to do it. And
Uh-huh.
outside of that, I would do, when you're starting out, it's, you have to find an offer that works, right? And a couple of offers, I mean, honestly, I see other guys, and I'm sure it's true, guys that are really copywriters, and wrote 50 promotions that were seven figures. I don't have 57-figure promotions, I think mentioned with the ones I've mentioned, you might be talking about half a dozen over a career, but those, you just need a few big winners. At least if you're running like a kind of operation like I'm running, where there's a really high profit margin. I do
Yep.
have, I do have a little office, and for various compliance reasons and this and that, and a place, where they store products and ship and all that. But really, it's really, some people are very surprised when they really like hear how low my overhead is.
Yeah. Wow. That's very, very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's
Mm.
huge. And I'm sure your course when it comes out is going to be a huge factor. I feel motivated, and you have like a lot of wisdoms. It sounds like you're a teacher at heart. I don't know if anyone ever told you
Yeah,
that, but it sounds like you're a teacher at heart. The course, I'm sure it's going to be amazing. So I want to wish you a lot of luck with that. And let me just ask, how can listeners find you, get in touch with you, learn more about what you're doing, and also maybe even get on a wait list for the course?
yeah, well, for sure. I guess the easiest way, I'm happy to give out my email, which is just the word nature hyphen cast, Charlie, Apple, Sam, Tom, nature hyphen cast at USA.net. That's a direct email to me. Put in the subject line, probably something like I heard on the podcast, like everyone else. I get 800 emails a day, and you have to figure out which ones you want to open. So it's a good
Yep.
subject line helps.
We'll put that in the show notes with the subject line ideas.
There you go.
Well, Paul, this has been really good. Thank you so much for coming on the Built to Scale podcast and teaching us a little bit about what it takes to scale in today's world.
Thank you. It was not a painful experience. So you're good at what you do. So that also helps. And I appreciate the reaching out.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening to the Built to Scale podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss a conversation about what it really takes to build and scale in today's market. For more information about Built to Scale and how we help companies grow, visit builttoscale.co. If you have suggestions for future guests or topics, send us a note at podcast@builttoscale.co. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, this is your host, Shmuel Hirschberg. And remember to keep building, keep testing, and keep scaling.